We're working on Chapter 33, Exercise 9, which you see up on my screen here. And let's read the problem description really quick. It says, write a JSF program that views, inserts, and updates staff information stored in a database as shown in Figure 33.32. We'll take a look at that in a second. The View button displays a record with a specified ID. The staff table is created as follows. All right. Now, this should look familiar because this is the same table that we used in the previous chapter. So we don't have to create it. We don't have to populate it with data. What we might end up doing is logging in to the Kronos web server through phpMyAdmin to make sure it's there. So if you guys haven't done that process in a while, the address is kronos.gtc.edu/phpMyAdmin, all lowercase. And then log into your account. And then once you're logged in, what you want to do is you just want to double check the database that we've been working with is the Java book database. And you can just make sure that there's a staff table, and then you can browse it and see what data's in there. So I have a couple pieces of data. So we have everything we need. Okay, so the database part's in place. You guys have already struggled through, do I have an account? Can I connect to the account? All that stuff. So those mechanical components are done. The database connection scripts are done. So really our focus now is to create the XHTML document and the Java code that does the interfacing with the system and get those two things to work together. All right. Now, what we're going to do, we are working in NetBeans. And we are going to need to create, well, isn't that nice? I have it right. I have all the answers right here, folks. No, I'm not going to share. Not yet. When we get to NetBeans, we're going to create a new project. All right, so now we're going to... All right, now you're hearing everybody laugh because I just asked them all to coach me through. So you can hear this all in the background. This is all immortalized in the recording, and it's going on YouTube. So just so you know, Big Brother is watching. All right, we're going to create ourselves a new project. So you can do it a couple different ways. You can click the toolbar or the file menu, create a new project. Are we going to do a Java web application? Yep, you bet. And it's a web application. So we're going to click Next. You should give it a name that makes sense, maybe like Exercise 33.9. All right, click Next. You're going to choose your server. In this case, we're going to stick with Glassfish. Has anybody tried Tomcat? Yeah, it's a pain to work with, frankly. When you work on real servers out in the wild, out in, doing real work, most of them will run Tomcat. And Tomcat is one of those things that you let like a network admin kind of guy configure it for you, and then it just works and you don't touch it. Because it can be a challenge to configure. It's gotten better, but just mentioning. All right, go ahead, click Next. If there's any other things that you want to throw in, I don't know, maybe Javaserver faces. What do you think? Yes. All right, well, get that enabled. If there's any libraries or stuff that you need to add, you can throw them in down here, but we're not in that situation. And then go ahead and click Finish, and then this builds out project folder for you. Now we're going to have two components here, folks, right? We're going to have the part where we have to build the web page, and we're going to use all those weird little H tags and F tags and all that stuff to do it. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to create a Java file, and that Java file is going to do a bunch of different things for us. The good news is, this is the good news, that we already know how to do the database part. Right? We've already done database connections. Those scripts are already written. We've already written code that will interface with the database. and we've already written Java code that allows us to create, update, destroy, and retrieve records, right? So we have a lot of the pieces already in hand. We might have to modify, but we at least have something that works that we can look at. The other thing that might help you kind of envision the output a little bit is to go back to the book here, and wherever that image is, what was that, 33, 32? All right, so this is what we're building HTML-wise. All right, that's a piece of cake. Like if you were writing in HTML, this is like, hello, HTML forms day one kind of stuff, right? It's pretty simple. But our trick is that we have to convert it into the Java server faces syntax. Okay, that's the hard part for us. So really the logical thing for us to do is to begin by building those components. So I'm going to start building the page, and then we're going to build the code that makes it work. All right, let's jump back over to NetBeans. All right, and I'm taking a look here at the document, and we probably want to start changing some of the titles here. Maybe exercise 33.9. And obviously we're going to say something other than hello from Facelets. All right, as we're building this, I'm going to quiz you a little bit. And of course you guys have the book sitting in front of you, and hopefully you tried some practice exercises, read the book, and looked at the lecture videos. Yes. Enthusiastic, yes, maybe. Now, just a refresher on how this works. Remember, the weirdness here is like the whole fact that we're really working in an XML file, and that we have a XHTML1 doc type combined with an XML namespace. That's the regular XHTML one, but we're also using the custom Java one, which allows us to use this H prefix on our tags and leverage the Java libraries that are part of the Javaserver faces framework that basically take these tags and turn them into HTML elements. So if we were to do this in straight HTML, what we're seeing on the screen, somebody just give me like if I pointed an object on the screen, tell me what HTML element you would use to create it. What about staff information? Label, paragraph, could be H1, H2, probably a paragraph. All right. Might even, you might be some sort of a header kind of thing. It depends on how you want to style it. So what about the ID text? Okay. So really, all these are labels, right? What about this? Yeah, and in fact, they're all text boxes, right? And what about these? Buttons? What about layout components? Do we have any layout components that we'd want to worry about? Okay. Do you guys remember last time when we worked on the first exercise, we used I'm trying to extract the words from you. We used some sort of a mechanism that allowed for a certain amount of columns. Do you remember that? And it wasn't a table. Okay, you guys are thinking grid pane, but that's in a GUI program. In the panel grid, thank you very much. I can tell Cindy Lou's the only one that read the book. Because if you read the book, that would jump right into your head. So basically what a panel grid does is it allows us to basically set up columns so that you can interject these elements. So for example, this row of HTML has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we would do a panel grid that has 6 columns. Okay. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about HTML structure and what stuff we might use and kind of identified a few things, we can go ahead and start putting in some of this stuff on the page. So one thing for sure that we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this. All right, let's make a little room. And we've already identified the fact that at the top we got some text, right? Now, we have a couple different ways we could do it. One thing that we could do is we could just create a paragraph, right? And say staff information. Is that what it's supposed to say? That's one way. Or if you wanted, and those of you that are copying what I'm typing, just be forewarned, I'm going to be changing what I'm typing right now. So don't copy too precisely. Another approach, and what the author chose to do here, and I think it's more for the preference of teaching you some techniques, is using some of these Javaserver faces tags. And what he used was the head tag to indicate that this is a header basically for what we're seeing below it. Now that's kind of weird, right? Because the weird part about it is, isn't that the same tag we're using up here? Yeah. Now, this is what the author did. Would I do it that way if it's really static HTML? Frankly, no. No, but you know what I might do is I might make it like an H2. I'll let you guys proceed as you see fit. There are some programmatic advantages to using nothing but the tags that are preceded with the H, but there's no reason why you can't intersperse it with just plain old HTML, and I think you guys will be generally more comfortable with that. The other thing that we're going to do is we need to create a form, right? So let's do that. And you can see it created the opening and the closing for us right away. See, NetBeans does do some pretty cool stuff. See, not only did it put in, oh, it didn't put in the closing. All right, so I'm talking ahead of myself here. Yeah, I thought it did. Yeah, and I didn't hit enter. All right, so looking again at this HTML output, I've created the staff information already. Now we're going to create a panel grid with 2 columns. And that's how we're going to proceed. We're going to do, for each row, we're going to do a panel grid. Each one's going to have a column. Each one's going to have a label. Each one's going to have an input box. All right, so let's create the first one. So this one's going to be a H panel grid. And we probably want to put in the number of columns here. And for columns, you just say columns and the number. We decided it was going to be what, 2? Right? 2 columns. And inside there, we are going to do an output label. Notice how cool it is with what NetBeans, like the suggestions that it puts out there. I think it's kind of neat. And then here, the text that we're going to display, instead of hard coding it, we actually just type it right here. This is what's going to appear. Because we're working with XML, we have to have that closing slash inside there. All right. Next thing that we're going to do is we are going to add the input text. And once again, we're going to have a value. But here is where we're going to put in one of these things that looks like this. And I don't have it yet, so I can't tell you what it's going to be. But we could kind of pre-decide, like, remember in the other exercise that we did where we basically have like a named scope, right? So whatever Java file we create, we put a little name at the top, and then we can use that name in combination with whatever method we're pulling from within the application. We haven't created that yet. So I'm just kind of put that in there, right? And as soon as we create it, we'll be able to come back and populate it. But I do want to get that HTML structure in there first. And I mean, I can guess as to what I would, make it and call it, but it'd be being a little premature. So That creates our first row. We need to create the second row. The second row has, this is the one with 6 columns. Yeah, you know what, we could copy and paste. That just seems way too simple. All right, you know, fine, I'll copy and paste. All right, so what's the label we need? Last name, first name, middle. You know, and maybe instead of putting in stuff that's going to flag an error, I'm going to clear the value out. And that way we don't have to look at any underlines. We just have to know to go back. And then we can actually, once again, do a couple of copy pastes. That's our pattern, right? So this will be first. And I think they just did MI. So that's the second row. If you're not in the habit, Control S to save. You know, working with these tags, you know, frankly, is a little strange, I'll admit. I'm sorry, say that again? Oh, I didn't do that. Thank you. Good catch. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, otherwise we'd be wondering what the heck's going on. All right, so finishing off the panel grid here. Get the opening and the closing right away. Once again, we'll have the same pattern, but this time we only need 2 columns again. So let's type in columns 2. I still have that other stuff in my clipboard or buffer, whatever you want to call it. That one is for address. All right, let's see what we have to do next here. City and state, that's going to be 4 columns. I'm doing this backwards here, right? Just double checking here. City, state. Apparently you don't need a zip code in this scenario. And then we're going to do one more that also has 2 columns. So I'm actually just going to copy this whole thing here since I got one with 2 columns already. And paste it. And that was telephone, right? Yeah, the point that was being raised was, are we going to throw email in there too? Because when we were working previously, we did that. Should we do that right away? I mean, it doesn't really take much. It would just be basically another structure like this. And we'll have email sit below telephone. So we're going to have an extra line. So we'll just do email. All right. All right. So that pretty much takes care of all the, you know, the standard HTML kind of stuff in terms of like our regular layout. The next thing that we have to do is get the buttons in there. All right. Now if we jump over to the book again, we're going to have to add 4 buttons. Those can also go in a grid like that. And let's see if I have this here. But that's going to require 4 columns. And we're not using a label or a text, input text box. So I'm actually going to delete all this stuff here. And what we are going to use is an element that basically creates a button, and to do that you do a command button. Alright, we can add a value to it, and the value is what the text is for the button. If you look at the example, it's view, insert, update, clear. Somebody remember that, because I'm going to forget it in about 2 seconds. It's already gone. And you think I'm kidding. I can guess as to what they are, though. Now, the action tag is what it's going to trigger. So when we hit this button, this is going to allow us to trigger something on the Java file that we're about to create. Now, once again, we don't know what it's called, but we could make a guess here. You know, depending on what we call that Java file, so let's just say we call it dirt. No, that's not what we're going to call it. But I would probably create something inside the Java file that would be a method called view, right? So that's probably what I'm going to do. So if we can think of a good name for this, could we maybe, you know, I'm kind of thinking ahead here a little bit, could we maybe call that file staff? Could we do that? Because then that way the syntax kind of makes sense. So we could call it staff view. And really, if you're thinking like that, or at least I'm thinking like that right now, I could really kind of extrapolate and go back through in all these spots where it's empty for all these import text values. We could probably say staff ID, staff last name, staff. See the pattern? And what we do is we just, knowing that in advance, we're kind of planning our class already by how we're planning our output. So let me put in the 4 buttons first, and then we'll go back and do that exact thing. So it's view, insert, update, and clear. Insert, update, clear. All right, other thing is, like we just mentioned, should I leave that on the screen for a second? The other thing you should do is make sure, I noticed here, that this should be 4 columns, not 2. I'm taking credit for something that one of the students actually caught, and I'm recording it, so whatever. We are in a mode tonight, aren't we? All right, so knowing that we're going to start naming some of the stuff here like this, I'm actually missing something here. We need to get that hash symbol in there, the £, and we need to wrap all this stuff with curly brackets. And you can see from the way that this auto types, I should have had that as a forethought, not an afterthought. So when I do the ones above, now this is where IDEs helping you can sometimes be a little annoying. But when you get into a workflow with one, you learn how to overcome these things. All right, so see the point here? Now I am scrolling up, and I will scroll back down, so don't don't go into panic mode, as I like to say. All right, so here, knowing that we're going to go staff dot, what should I call this one? ID? And can we just copy that pattern all the way through? Absolutely. Probably do it all lowercase like that. So when you're doing something like this, it actually, once you get it into the flow of working, the pattern is repetitive. So you got one, you kind of have them all. Trick is getting that first one though, right? Yeah. Now the funny thing is, if I would have created my Java file first, the suggestions that would come up in the IDE would immediately pull directly from that table. I wouldn't even have to type it. But I'm kind of working in the opposite direction. And that's actually pretty common. When you're working with GUI stuff, you tend to think of what the output's going to look like. Not that it's necessarily right or wrong any certain way, but notice I'm also sticking with the convention of all lowercase. Oh, what do we call this one? Phone? Yeah, let's call it phone. All right. Do a Control S to save. Don't lose your work. The other thing that we might find a little helpful, and Christian, you were mentioning earlier that, how about that thing where we did a little status? You know what? I did that last time, and I actually put it in there, so I'm copying from my own work here, if you guys are wondering. So I'm going to put in another panel grid at the bottom. It's only going to have one column, so I don't need to say columns. It's just going to be there. And what I'm going to throw there is just a little place to output some text. So it doesn't really have to go into a structure, like these other input text fields. It's just going to be text to the screen. And the thing that they have for that is called output text. That works pretty well for it. Here, well, we have to do a value. And the value is going to be staff. And we'll have something called status. The other cool thing, though, is did you guys know that you can actually throw CSS in here? Yeah. So you do a color. And what color should we throw in? Red. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Or maybe blue. All right. Notice this one, the way I closed it, though. I didn't put the slash inside. I actually put it outside. Because what it's going to do is it's going to insert text here. It works a little bit differently. All right. So just as a little bit of a chance for you guys to learn from this code, I'm going to scroll to the top. This is also for the people copying at home. Pause the video. All right, unpause. The next block. And then the very bottom. All right, if you want to see what this looks like, I did launch it just a couple seconds ago to test it, and it did work. I had the concern that maybe since we haven't created the external Java file with this stuff, it didn't know what to do, but apparently it just ignores it. So I came up here, I selected my browser, and then I hit the run button, and you can see it generated the page. Now, my page launched really quick, and that's because I had already initiated the server. So the server is a piece of software that, it's a pretty significant piece of software. So it's software that has to launch, run, initialize, then read the page, load the page, and push it to the browser. So after the first time you've launched it, the subsequent launches will be almost immediate because the server software keeps running. Now when it is running, you guys should be aware that down here at the bottom, you're going to get some output, right? So this is output from the application. So it's showing you what's happening. I think it's fascinating because if you actually read here, it even shows you all this information about my machine, like all the folders I store in, etc. It also indicates that there's some database stuff going on in the background, not stuff that we put in yet, but there's an interaction with the database from the web server with the database to get it to run. And then Glassfish is the server software that's running in the background. And what's fascinating about that is anything that we do in the browser when the server's running will be logged here, just like on a real web server. Right. If for some reason you want to stop the server, you can just hit one of these little buttons over here, or refresh it, restart, and there are times when you can write code that can make it mess up, but generally speaking, once the server is running, you're fine. The other thing you should be aware of is always look at the output here. You notice, well, first of all, localhost refers to your own machine, right? That's a loopback. But then there's a port number of 8080. That's default for Glassfish. Remember, the regular HTTP web port is 80. If you're using 80, you don't need to specify it. But then, interestingly, take a look at the output that follows it, right? We're not loading up index.xhtml. You notice that? It's loading up the project name. It provides clean URLs. It's another advantage. I mean, it's very much like a content management system that's set to do the same thing. All right. If we look at the resulting HTML code, if you do a right click, take a look at what happens. Boy, it took all that stuff and it put it into a table. Yeah, put everything into separate tables. Okay, can we just say that as probably not the, I wouldn't write HTML that way. But whatever, it works. Could I have just come in and instead of doing what I did, could I just take the output labels and input text and just create any sort of HTML structure I want? Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, the reason I did this is to show you that there's, the Java way to do it. But you don't have to use Java tags throughout. You would want to use the form tag, and any of the fields that are doing Java interactions need to have those tags. Okay. With that in mind, it's now time to move forward and create the Java file that goes with this. All right, so since we're going to build a Java file, we got to find a place to put it. In the Java files, you can see I have a previously completed version of this. The Java files end up in the source package folder right here. Okay, so that's where we're going to put it. So when we go to create it, I'm going to right click on source packages and I'm going to say new what? Java class maybe? That would make a lot of sense. All right, so what do we want to call the class name? Could we call it staff? Wait, does it have to have a capital S? Which package are we going into? The default is fine, which we don't really have to specify. New class. Right. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. And you can see that it placed the file right here. All right, so now we got a little bit of work to do. I'm blowing away all the comments. And now we're just writing a Java program. And remember, we have the advantage here where we can borrow from our own work, which is handy. All right, so we were having a little discussion here while the video was paused that I should have created a managed bean instead of creating just a Java file, even though the truth is it would still work. So I'm actually going to come in here and I'm going to delete this file. And all you have to do is right-click delete. All right. So now we need to right-click the project node again, and this time we're going to create a what? A managed bean. All right. And we were going to call it staff. It's going to go into the default package. And is there anything else that we need to set? Well, we already know that it's going to preset the name of itself basically to staff. So I'm just going to go ahead and click finish. All right, so you can see I'm being a little hasty here, so I'm going to be deleting what I just did again because I have students that apparently know this stuff better than I do, at least the people that read the assignments and the chapter. So we skipped another step again, so we're still going to name it staff, but the part that we missed was we need to have an application scope, right? Is it? You know, I've had this discussion many times over. You can do it a couple of different ways. When we did 33 or 33, oh, we didn't even do that here, did we? We did the previous one. Did we even set it? Yeah, we did. So, all right, so what do we do then? You guys read the book. Okay, to kind of further our discussion a little bit about scope, you know, we can actually use different ones here and they would all work just fine because the kind of stuff that we're doing is fairly simplistic. But in terms of formal definition, we have these types available to us. No, let's just read through what it says. It says request scope is alive in a single HTTP request. One button press. A single request. Okay, but think about that for a second. If you load a web page and you click, that's a single request. It'll do exactly what we ask it to do, so that's fine. All right, let's read the next one. A view scope bean lives as long as you are in the same JFS page. So that would work too. Yeah, that's where I'm leading you to. Session scope, the bean is alive for an entire web session between client and server. This is the one we would probably skip because a session also kind of indicates that we would have other components running that are keeping a connection open between client and server. Frankly, this one would work too, but this is probably one I would stay away from. The last one, application scope, lives as long as the web application runs. That is probably the most open out of all of them. So in terms of which one we're going to choose, you know, it depends. Well, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's my thinking. That's what the author has as a solution. Application scope to me seems the most flexible, but you certainly could do it with request and view just as efficiently. What you would probably end up figuring out is you try to do like multiple actions. Hey, it's not working. Why is it not working? And then you change your scope and it works. Okay. No. What we're going to do though let's say if you decide to do your final project using JSF, this would be relevant for you, where you might want to keep application scope. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go with application scoped. So now that we're really learning a lot about this by creating and destroying it multiple times. And you notice there's other scopes that are mentioned that aren't in the book, right? All right, so we're going to do application scoped, and we're going to click finish, and we're sticking with it. All right, we'll see. So I'm going to remove all the comment marks here just to save a little screen space. They already have pre-populated a couple of libraries for us, and you can see that they have the public class created and they have the constructor pre-created. Now we are going to need in this class file to create a bunch of data fields, and I'm going to go ahead and create a number of them. In fact, I'm going to follow the form of the form, right? Remember all the fields? Yeah, in fact, we decided that all these are lowercase, right?
Yeah, they were all.
So this part, hopefully I don't have to coach you through this part. People watching the video are like, what are these guys doing?
So the buttons on the bottom for the XHTML, those are the command buttons.
Yes, they are command buttons. And then we had telephone, and then we opted to add email as well because we were doing that with earlier exercises. You're right, Christian. I named it phone, not telephone. And what he's referring to, if you can overhear him, is for this one I opted to use phone. So that's why I'm not using telephone. So if you were working on the earlier exercise from the previous chapter where we did database stuff and you did not add email to your database, you wouldn't have to add that because it wouldn't match up with your table, but we did, so we are. We're also going to do a string for status. All right, now I'm going to put a little comment here. Okay, so we're going to add this thing called prepared statements here. It's a type of class. I haven't put it in yet, okay, because I want to kind of build some of the other stuff out first. One thing that we probably want to do is we probably want to get that database connection going, I'm thinking. And I'm going to start building that. In fact, I'm going to do it in the form of a try-catch, and I'm going to create a method to do it. Okay, we are going to have a constructor, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I want to get the database part out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a private here, and I'm going to call it, it's not returning anything, let's call it initDB. So initialize database, we would do it like that. We will not pass anything to it. And then I'm going to do a try, except I probably want a curly bracket there, I think. And then we also want to have a catch. And I'm not sure why they didn't cooperate. Maybe because I'm not doing it in a nice smooth stream here. You know, because it will auto-type stuff for you, provided you follow their patterns. Well, let's just do the try part first. We can always add the other stuff. Now I have database stuff that I've used before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy and paste it in. All right, so let's get that database stuff in there. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just going to some of my other code that's already prepared, and I'm just pasting it in. And I do have to tweak some things here. First of all, I'm not connecting to localhost, right? I'm connecting to Chronos. And on Chronos, you also have to preface the database name with your username and an underscore, remember? And then you have to actually put in your real username and password in plain text. And my password is actually password, which is the most secure of all passwords, right? All right, so we have a few different things here we need to load up. So let's pull up some libraries. All right, so we got our connection. We need to get our driver manager. So I'm just clicking at to the end of that keyword, then control space, and then just take a look at the drivers that are, or the libraries that are being loaded up. Now it's noticing that we don't have this driver, so we have to add it. Okay, and it also is throwing the same exception here, and the only way that we can catch a SQL exception if there's a problem with the database is to once again drop in a library. Oops. So that added this library. All right. And it also encapsulated us inside of a throws SQL exception just in case the database doesn't connect. So if you need to look at all of that, I'm hoping this part for you is okay right now. I know you're typing really fast, but these are the libraries up top. Another thing you can do if you want to be really efficient about it, if you're not sure which SQL libraries you can put in, you can just get rid of all of these and just have one and put a star or asterisk here, right? And it just loads all of them. That's not really considered efficient though. It's better to load the stuff that only the stuff you need. Yeah, it will, because it has to pull all that stuff in. So here I'm hovering over this one, and it says unreported exception, class not found exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. Alt-Enter show hints. Okay, okay, so I know the reason it's doing that, but I'm trying to get the little box to come up, but it's deciding not to come up. There we go. Now this is, it says add a catch clause. Okay. But the catch that it's going to throw in is this isn't the one that we're looking for. The catch that we really want, and I was being a little hasty there, is we just want the plain old exception. Like if it doesn't work, that's the one that we want. And in addition, really all we need to do here is do something like this. Now, calling an exception X is kind of like a convention. If you're wondering, I'm not just pulling that out of thin air. But I'm going to do this print stack trace, and that'll be fine. And it's okay if you copy me doing this. That's fine. All right, we took a pause here so everybody could kind of catch up. We are going to be adding, and I had somebody ask, we are going to be adding more stuff here, absolutely. But one thing that we should consider is all the real simple, basic things that you do with these types of applications. So for example, in a constructor function, one thing that you can do to instantiate is basically take all of the fields that we have declared here and give them a value when you construct, right? Here's a interesting little way. This is a piece of syntax you probably haven't seen before. Like one common approach would be, let's say we go like email equals empty quotes, right? And we could actually did that above, right? But when we construct, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to create an empty one. One way to kind of do all of them at once, and check out this technique. And this is probably one you haven't seen, but I think it's worthy of showing it to you. And I'm copying my code from somewhere else where somebody used camel case, like we probably should have. But I'm just taking all the fields and basically setting them to empty quotes. One's equal to the other, and ultimately they're all equal to empty quotes. Isn't that cool syntax? It's almost too simple. All right. The other thing that we want to do when we construct is we want to initialize the database. So we're going to do that right here. Now this is throwing an error also. All right, well, let's not worry about the SQL exception. I think that, I don't know if that'll stop us or not. I'm doing Alt-Enter right now. It's saying no suggestions. Thank you. Oh, okay, that could be that we're... Yeah, little does it realize we're doing that down below. Okay, so I see what they're doing. They want us to just throw a SQL exception if it fails here. That's fine. Just do what it says. It's not going to break anything one way or the other. All right. The other thing that we'll want to do is for all the data fields that we have declared, setters and getters would be good, don't you think? Has anybody learned the shortcut way of doing it? And okay, somebody's saying right click. Yeah, this is an Eclipse. Here, let's put out a challenge. All right, so I put out the challenge, and I did get somebody figure it out, and it was within a minute or two. So if you highlight all these fields here, all these variables, and just do a right click, insert code, setter and getter, and sure, all of them. All right, so we have all our setters and getters now for the data fields. That's a lot, right? We just saved like, I just wrote 100 lines of code and I didn't even try. What I did is I highlighted all of these. Yeah, it doesn't have to be highlighted. I guess that's kind of a habit I have. Insert code. Notice it also does a constructor automatically too. Now these are little tricks that you're going to pick up over time, but you know I also want you to get the concept. So notice how everything is named. All of them have this. All of them have get and set. All of it's done camel case. Pretty straight ahead stuff. All right. The other thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up some prepared statements. And really, you know, I left a little note here for myself, and this is where we're going to add them in. So you guys may as well, let's get moving on it. So we're going to do prepared statement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find like an easy way to abbreviate this. I don't like using such a long keyword, so why don't we do PS view, prepared statement for view. Okay, so that's my mindset here. And then very much the same way, and I guess we should add that library. And then we're going to do, yeah, we're going to do the other buttons as well. Yeah, hover, and then Alt-Enter, or go to the end of it and press Control Space. Yeah, now I want you to think about this too. We are going to need to do a statement for view. We also definitely have to do one for insert. We also have to do one for update. Can you tell me why I wouldn't need to do one for clear? We're just getting rid of stuff. We're not really doing statement. We're just clearing the form. All right, so that's actually kind of cool, because then how would I do a clear? Watch and learn, young ones. Watch and learn. I know this is all being recorded too, which is the scary part. So one of the methods that we have to write is clear. And I've already got it written, so I'm just pulling it in. And I'm going to correct my little typos here. But you know that statement that we used up top to do the construction? We're using that same thing. We're just clearing everything. And we're going to throw email into the mix as well, because we have that in ours. And then I'm also taking the string status, and I'm throwing a message with it. So that's what I'm going to do with all of those buttons. Every time a button is pressed, it's going to generate a status message, like it worked, it didn't work, whatever. Just something to show the user what happened. All right, now it's time to do a little bit more work. Let's go back to the database section here. And you can see I left a little bit of space. And what we're going to do is we're going to start preparing ourselves for the queries that are going to go back and forth. Right? So this is going to be part of the initialization process, because we need to kind of preset a format that's going to make our life a little easier. So watch what I do here. I'm going to create a string. And remember, the whole point of this is to help do our work in the other methods. That's why I'm doing it. And I'm going to call it query view. So this is going to be the query that's going to be used to do a view. That's, well, I guess I just said that, didn't I? And we're going to do a select statement. We're just writing regular SQL code now. We're going to select in the format of how our database is created. So I'm actually going to go to phpMyAdmin here. So see how we have our fields name? They're camel case, so it's uppercase N, uppercase in both of those. Otherwise, everything else is lowercase. Telephone is actually telephone, not phone in the database, so I need to know that. So we're going to select ID, right? No, we're not. That's not true. We're going to select, and I'll explain why. Last name, first name, middle initial, What else do we have? Address, city, state. Kind of running out of space here. All right, I'm going to go to the next line. And going to the next line, I need to concatenate. Steady state, telephone, email. Anything else? All right, those are the fields. Now we can put in our from. And if you want to do your SQL statements uppercase, if you're more comfortable with that, go for it. Over the years, I've actually grown away from that. So from, which table are we pulling it from? Uppercase S in my case, right? It is. All right, email from staff. All right, and then where ID equals question mark, right? Trust me, it's right. And we need a semicolon at the end. All right, that's to set up the query for the view. Now the other thing is, so now we're going to do a prepared statement. We already have one created, right? We called it PS view. And that's going to equal the connection. And then we're just going to issue, you can see right up top here, prepared statement, or prepare statement technically. And then the thing that we're going to stick into it is query view. Now guess what? We're going to do this again. So we're going to do a string to query for insert. Once again, typing a SQL statement. This time we're going to do an insert, and we're going to into the staff table, and then we're going to throw stuff in the order that it's in the database. So we're going to say ID, comma, last, capital N, name, and now I just want to be clear on this too, folks. We're going in column order now, right? So our form might say first name, last name, but this is saying last name, first name. So we have to be in the order. If we're going to use this syntax in SQL, we have to be in the same order. Then we'll do middle initial. Let's drop to the next line and concatenate. And we should probably put a comma after middle initial, right? And then after middle initial, we have address, city, state, telephone, email, close your parens, the values that we're sending, and this is a good spot to concatenate again. And the values that we're going to send are, well, we don't know. But we need question mark. So how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we got our closed double quotes and then a semicolon. Once again, we have to do a prepared statement. Insert. That's going to equal connection, prepare statement, query, insert. semicolon. Also have to do one for update. And update's got its own SQL command. We'll do an update staff, and we're going to do a set. And then here's where we're going to take each one of the fields and basically do this pattern. So the pattern's going to be last name equals question mark. First name equals question mark. Let's get middle initial up here too. And let's drop to the next line and concatenate. What comes next? Telephone. And email. All right. And then we'll get a little, we're going to add one more line here. And then we're going to throw in I'm going to throw in an extra space here. And we'll throw in our where ID equals whatever it equals. Following the same pattern, we are going to do a prepared statement update. Did I use camel case? I sure did. All right, and that's going to do that part of it. So this is all of our database stuff kind of happening right here. But what's cool about this approach, using the prepared statement, is we have the framework for doing the queries in place. And that way, when we're pulling stuff in from the form, it dynamically will get inserted into these positions and execute. All right. We still need to set up methods, though, that are going to populate all those question marks, basically. So now that we've completed this part of it, the next part of it is to build a method for view, insert, and update. We already did clear. Clear doesn't take anything. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. All right, so now that we've created all these pre-configured queries and SQL statements, remember we're doing this to kind of save ourselves a little bit of hassle of having to manually code it each time. We are now going to build methods for view, insert, and update, and they're going to have exactly those names. So believe it or not, the ones that are going to be the easiest to create are insert and update, because basically they're really similar. So to me it makes sense to create those first. So I'm going to create a little room here, and I'm going to create, let's start with insert. I'm going to do public. There's a void. We call it insert, parens, curlies. And now we're going to use our syntax. We're going to do PS insert. And that's going to be equivalent, no, actually we're not going to do an equal, I apologize. We're going to do set string, and there's two values here. Okay, the first value is what? It's going to correspond to our SQL statement. So it's going to basically look and it goes, well, what's the first thing it needs? Well, for insert, the first thing it needs is ID. Okay. So we're going to say, notice how it, yeah, it already figured out that we need to put in ID. You notice how it's automatically starting at, I didn't type that in. Oh, but it's throwing an error. What's it saying? What it's saying is that this might throw up an error. Like what if there's an error in the SQL statement, or what if there's a problem with the database? You got to remember, whenever it's like warning about a possible exception, it's a spot where if the data's wrong, you can crash the application, and you never want that to happen. So we're going to do Alt-Enter. Oh, okay. Not there. All right. Alt-Enter. Okay, did it again. One of these times I'll actually get it right. No suggestions. Thanks, Ryan. All right. So we need to put in a try-catch. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to surround the statement with a try-catch. Now, they have this long little thing here that's just going to log the error. But for our intents and purposes here, I mean, you can leave that. And basically what this would do is it wouldn't work, and it would create a log entry on a file the user would never see. For our intents and purposes right now, it makes a little bit more sense to actually output it to the screen. So we're going to do a print track stack trace. If I can say it, we'll do it. All right? And that way we can see it. Otherwise it gets logged, and logged is a little bit more elegant, because you don't really want the user to, oh, you got a broken database, here's your SQL statement that's off. You know, that's irrelevant. But you might put in some code that says, sorry, the database is unavailable currently, try again in a couple of minutes. Or our programmers don't know what they're doing because they're still going to Gateway Technical College trying to figure it out. Until then, good luck. All right, so now we're going to come back up here, and we are going to type a series of these, right? And really, you know, I should type it, because what happens when you type it, so what's going to be the next one? Yeah, but are we using the database last name, or are we using the variable last name? Apparently it's the variable. And which one are we on now? 2? First name? Yeah, I'm cheating. Yeah, after a while you get a little impatient. No, these are the variable name versions we created on this, or in this file. These are not the database names. And that's all the statements. The other thing we probably want to put here is PS insert execute update, like that. And then the other nice thing to do is put in a status equals inserted. Something like that. Something that makes sense. And if you want in these exception areas, you could do status equals something like that. Or it doesn't work. Uh-oh. Is that how you spell it? Uh-oh. How do you spell those things? All right. All right, so you guys got insert? So once you have insert, guess how easy update is? Very easy. It's almost identical. Thank you. Control C, Control V. So we're going to call this one update. And in all these spots where we have insert here, we're going to type update. So I just had a little revelation as I was looking at this code here that we might have a little bit of an issue with these index number values because they need to correspond with the order in which the SQL statement itself is written. So for example, for insert, ID comes first, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And then when we wrote this, it follows that same pattern. When we do an update, though, what order is the data in? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. ID is 8. Right? So you got a little adjusting to do here. That was update, right? So ID is 8. Last name is 0, 1, 2, etc. Otherwise you'll be like, why is your chocolate in my peanut butter? Right?
How is that never a problem?
Yeah, it's never been a problem. But you don't want your email address going into the phone number field, basically. You know how you would figure this one out if I didn't mention it? Yeah, it would happen, and then you'd be like, why is that happening? I mean, yeah, because wherever we're putting those question marks, we have to do some stuff. All right, so the last thing that we have to write is the view. So let's go ahead and create at least the beginning for that. We're home stretch here. All right. What I'm going to do here, and what I've done in the past, because I'm copying from my old code, I was trying to let you guys know that. I'm doing a print line to the console, and what I'm going to output is the ID. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to see what ID is printing out or outputting. In other words, are we getting the right one? All right. So after we do that, we're going to write a prepared statement. So I'm going to do a PS view. And that's going to be or actually we're going to do a set string, and we're going to pull back ID, right? Yes, that's what we're doing. All right, so we're going to pull back ID. And, keep in mind that, there's a field order here, so we're trying to, like, stick with that. And then we also want, because we're going to be actually pulling back a query, remember, and we did this in the database chapter, we're going to pull back a result set. I'm not sure why that ended up down there. I must have hit the wrong key. So we're going to do a result set. I don't know what we'll call it. Let's just call it result. And apparently this needs a library. All right, what is it not liking here? Okay, so once again, this wants a try catch. So I'm going to do Alt-Enter. And once again, I'm going to use the print stack trace in my uh-oh message. I mean, you can always stick with what's there. And really, I didn't want this all the way down here. I want it to be right after that statement. So that's where I'm going to put it. I want it to be there. Oh yeah, well I haven't finished the statement. That's what it's telling me. All right, so then we're going to do PS view dot execute query. Somebody tell me what this is going to do.
It's going to have to check the query for ID.
Based on the ID that we're throwing at it. Exactly right. So right, there's a little bit of coding going on here. Now it's throwing something in there automatically. So I could either call the column name, if I know what the name of the column is, or the column index value. The column index value for last name is 1, right? And really what's going to happen here, we're just going to have, this is going to be a repeating process. This is worthy of copy pasting. So this is going to be first name, that's column 2. And I'm jumping back to the database here, you guys, because here we're looking at the staff table. I guess I got to log back in. Where is it? There it is. Oh yeah, no, I'm seeing a problem here. Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of problem here. Yeah, there's no 0. So all the numbers that we've put in so far, we're going to go back and we're going to adjust them all by 1 number. It's a good thing I looked because it just popped in my head. I'm like, all right. The database starts counting the ID numbers at 1. So you guys ready for this? All of them must be increased by 1. If you guys find this tedious, Might want to consider a different career path.
I was gonna say, well,
But boy, you know, if you guys are sitting down and playing a video game that was really tedious to try to get through a level or something, you guys would be at it all night long until you got it. I don't know why programming should really be any different. I am so glad I caught that. Otherwise, I'd be getting like 20 emails. Hey, I copied your code and it doesn't work. Actually, I would copy my code and it wouldn't work. So, and how do we validate that? Well, let's just look. See? Right there. All right, so we caught those. We caught those. This needs to be a 1. And so last name will be 2. First name will be 3. And really, you know, the part that I'm going to copy paste is this last part. So the next thing that comes is middle initial. That's 4. Address. State. Did we call it phone here? Is that what we called it? Did we?
that's how we make them.
Find out in a sec. And email. Okay. If there is no next item, we will do an else. And really, I'm going to do an output to the console. I did this in the past for a reason. And we could also do a status message. And if you guys want to be funny, there should be humor, right? All right. You can be funny, it's okay. And by my estimations, that's all we need to do. All right, I'm just checking all these numbers again.
You don't have to set it and whatever
In, for which thing?
you can just set this string and you're good. You don't have to put it.
No, no. I mean, what we're doing is we're pulling in from the form, and then this is taking that information, putting it into the query string, and then the prepared statement sending it off to execute. Not really. Yeah, it's a good point. Status really doesn't need it, but it doesn't hurt that they're there. Yeah, getters and setters for that one. Oops. All right, I think we're good. Now comes the brave part, seeing if it works. All right, I have these two libraries here that are flagging. I'm removing them. I'm looking for other underlines, highlights, little light bulbs on the side like this. It should be removed. All right, well, I'm leaving it there, so. It should be, but it's not going to be. All right, I'm saving it. My index file seems to be saved. Can anybody anticipate in advance any problems that we might run into? Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any. Hit and play. All right, yay! Yeah. All right, so notice the error that we're getting. It says index.html.xhtml. It says at 1955, line 19, column 55, the value staff.first, the class staff does not have the property first. Okay, let's go back and take a look. Line 19, see the little flag here? First name. All right, let's try it again. Yay, at least it's showing up. Now, whether it works or not, that's a separate story. All right, so the way that this is best going to work is take a look at your database and look at the actual contents of the database. So I'm going into browse mode on it, and I see that I have somebody with an ID of 111 and one with 222. So the real logical thing for us to do then is to go back to the browser and type in 111 and view. Okay. You see I'm not going into panic mode here. We just have to tweak our code, right? But it says Java language null pointer exception. This is where when you put in those little system out print lines, I'm going to go back to NetBeans now and I'm going to look down here and I'm going to see if there's any console messages that are telling me what's going on. Yeah, the build was successful. Yeah, so you see all the little outputs that are happening here. Got all sorts of stuff going on. So this little button, so really what I want to do is I want to look at the one that's the culprit here. The ones that are in Java libraries, there's nothing I can do about those. The ones I can do something about are things like this. So it says staff.view, so it's telling me the method, 186. That's what it's pointing to. So I can actually, honestly, I can click on this and it'll take me right there. So it's not liking this. This PSView set string ID. My guess is there's something about the index value that's still not quite right. Now, yeah, here's what I'm gonna do on just a real primitive level. I'm gonna stop the database server. I'm gonna restart it. I'm sorry, the web server. All right, you can watch all the server logs running here so that you see all the things it's doing in the background. Okay, so here it is waiting for stuff to happen. And I think it's just about ready to go. Okay. All right, so before we run into any issues, I don't think that these are causing any problems, right? I think we need to run it again and take a look at the output. Okay, so one more time. All right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the server logs just from doing that. Okay, so the application seems to be running okay. But right off the bat, notice how there's already exceptions happening in the server. All right, so this is where we left off. Notice it says severe. That's really enticing. And it says for the first problem we have here, see right here? First problem, we want to find the first one. And at line 113, there's line 108. Let's look at those two first. So line 113 and 108. So 108 is the init database. I don't see what a problem would be with that. And then 113, 113. I'm going to pause for a second and let you guys figure it out. All right. So I put out the little challenge there to see if people could figure it out, and somebody finally did. That it's flagging lines 108 and 113. And notice here it says, well, this says something completely different. But basically what's happening is we never added the driver for it to connect to the database, so it can't connect to the database. We can't do any of the database stuff at all. So the question is, how do we do it? See these three tabs up top here? See this one called databases? Yeah, there's these three tabs up top here, projects, files, and services. And then notice that we have some stuff here. Now I kind of have a little bit of an issue here as well, because I have MySQL local on my machine. Notice Java's got its own database. There's drivers. But we need to get this connecting up so that this will work. Should I try the connect thing, you think? What's my username? What's my password? Oh, I know my password. Yeah. So it doesn't know how to connect is what it's telling you. Even though we have this stuff here, let's connect. Yeah, so you see what it did?
It'll only do it if you would have run it already.
Yeah,
The driver, it'll look for it for you.
let's give it a try now. Can I hit play again? Okay, so it came up in my other window here. Let me just pull it over. Oops. Okay. So now, yeah, right? Yeah. It still doesn't like this particular line here. All right, so this is our next thing to fix. And that took us, I mean, because last time we looked at the bottom error, at least we got rid of one of the errors. So now we're back to some of this other syntax here. Yeah, and I have a suspicion as to what it is. This is line 186 in view. You can see I'm like totally double checking my code syntax here. I'm going to run this again. Wasn't that interesting? Why did it come up there? Oh yeah, Internet Explorer. Thank you. No. All right. Wow, it is. Did we break something?
Oh, it's different.
Yeah, it does look different.